Welcome back. Rob Report here on 970 WDAY. If you've got calls or comments, 701-293-9000, 888-970-9329 is your toll-free number. Tweet me at Rob Port or send me an email, talk@WDAY.com. Joining me now is the administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency, Mr. Scott Pruitt. Mr. Pruitt, thank you for your time today.
Rob, good to be with you.
Good to be with you. You know, we had in years past, I have joked to people outside of North Dakota that our pastime here in the state is suing the EPA because we've done a lot of it over the years. And I've noticed recently that you are striking a much different tone. You sent a letter to our governor, Doug Burgum, in which you said, I quote, "The days of coercive federalism are over." And then just recently, you indicated that your agency would be approving, or I guess indicated that you intend to approve a program for carbon capture and sequestration, which our state feels is very important for both the coal and oil industries here, and had been sort of languishing under the Obama administration for 4 years. Expand on this from us. I mean, is this something you're seeking? Is a better relationship with the states? Would you say that's a priority of yours?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I mean, if you go back to the inception of the agency, Rob, and the legislation that was passed, the Clean Water Act, Clean Air Act, those very key environmental statutes that we passed through Congress, you know, the Congress has been very intentional about making sure that states have a role, you know, that the states have a voice, but beyond a voice, actually responsibility and leadership that they can show at improving our water quality and air quality across the country. And the past administration, to your point, simply disregarded that. They used the authority of Washington, D.C. They used the power of Washington, D.C. to coerce, to walk over the states. In fact, you know, they looked at states as mere vessels of federal will, and that's not the proper approach either in achieving good outcomes, and it's definitely not the right approach as it relates to the statute and the Constitution. And so we've restored a focus here on cooperative federalism, partnership, working together. And, you know, North Dakota, with respect to this carbon sequestration issue that you cite, Rob, only state in the country that has applied for that type of authority, and we granted it to recognize that the states have expertise, they have commitment, they have resources, they have a desire to come in and make sure that we do things efficiently, protecting air and water quality, but here exercising the program in conjunction with this agency. So very, very right thing to do, and I'm glad that we were able to get this done. Governor Burgum's done a great job, and appreciate his leadership and the partnership.
701-293-9000, 888-970-9329, email talk@WDAY.com. You know, we had another vote. Yesterday we got some pretty good news on the carbon sequestration thing. Today the Senate voting, and I realize that this is a BLM rule, but regarding methane emissions. And it's pretty complicated stuff. As the EPA, as the head of the EPA, I mean, my understanding is that sort of air quality regulation typically falls under your purview and not the BLM. Can you give us any insight on this?
That's correct. I mean, the distinction here is it's public land, and there is a corollary rule that the one that you're referencing involves BLM and public lands, but there's a corollary rule that we're in the process of withdrawing, or will withdraw here, that involves private land. And so both are very important. And I think what, Rob, we need to recognize again is that you know, the EPA has a very important role to play as it relates to air quality and water quality that traverse or, you know, transboundary across state line. But there's a very important role for states to play. And the way that this has worked historically is that the states and the EPA work together. They partner together to ensure good outcomes. And the past administration turned that on its head. I'll give you one statistic. Under the Clean Air Act, with respect to President Bush I, President Clinton, and President Bush II, those three presidential administrations issued 5 federal implementation plans under the Clean Air Act, 5 total. The past administration issued 56. And when I say coercive federalism, that's exactly what I'm referring to. Because when you do that 56 times compared to 5 over the 3 previous administrations, what you're saying is we're going to run over, we're going to coerce, we're going to intimidate, we're going to force the states to do things that otherwise, you know, they're supposed to be doing, and we're going to do it in their place. And that's just simply a wrong way of doing business. And what happened as a result, Rob, is litigation. You mentioned North Dakota. As Attorney General of Oklahoma, I joined with Wayne Stingham and North Dakota at suing the EPA for its overreach. In fact, I've criticized by some of my opponents as saying you've put somebody in charge of the EPA who sued the EPA 13, 14, 15 times. My response to that is they deserved it. And they deserved it because they exceeded their statutory authority, they exceeded their constitutional authority, and when they got outside of their lane, they got sued and they got stopped. And so they didn't even achieve good environmental outcomes. All they did was incur litigation cost in the process. So it's a much better process to work with the states, to partner with the states, obviously follow the statute as passed by Congress. And look, this issue on carbon sequestration, North Dakota is going to be the primary regulator of that. We've proposed the rule. It's not been finalized yet, but that process has begun, and it's taken 4 years, as you indicated, since that request was first made for this agency to act. And so we acted decisively with the governor and North Dakota, and it's absolutely the right thing to do.
What about your critic? I play devil's advocate here because I'm with you. I think the EPA's got a giant role to play. The environment doesn't stop at any given state's borders, and I get that. I want to pump oil and I want to mine for coal, but I don't want to do that stuff in a way that hurts the environment of North Dakota or any other state. I think that's where most reasonable people are. But what about the people who say that your approach, sort of pushing some of this authority back to the state or putting the state back in the driver's seat, I guess, so to say, on some of these regulations, is going to make it harder to protect the environment? What's your message to them?
Well, look at the past administration's environmental record and ask yourself, what did they achieve? With respect to water, you had Flint and Gold King in Colorado. With respect to Superfund sites, you have 1,322 approximately Superfund sites across the country, which is more than when President Obama came in. Air attainment, still at 40% non-attainment in this country with respect to ozone. Roughly 130 to 140 million people living in non-attainment. What's so great about that record? On carbon, they tried twice to regulate CO2 and struck out twice. Supreme Court told them in the UARG decision that they overreached, and they told them in the Clean Power Plan that they overreached. So I don't quite understand the environmental left when they say that somehow what the past administration was done was so great. We're going to focus on air attainment. We're going to take existing, regulations and work on compliance and assistance with the states. We're going to come into Superfund sites and reimagine the architecture to actually get some of those sites off the list. With respect to water infrastructure, the president's talked about investing in water infrastructure through the infrastructure package that's being discussed this year. So, I really think that we need to focus on metrics and objectives, and then look at our record compared to the Obama record at the end of 4 years. And I think we're going to do really well.
I think you make a really good point. When I have looked at a lot of the regulatory initiatives coming out of the Obama administration over the 8 years that they were in office, what I saw a lot of times seemed like a priority that was aimed more at creating headaches for industries, I guess I should say, that they don't like, than it did protecting the environment. I mean, to me,
That's right.
They weren't asking the question and saying, okay, well, how can we develop coal responsibly and keep improving? How can we develop oil responsibly and keep improving the safety records there? It was, what sort of landmines can we put in place to create headaches for these industries so that we move on to other things?
It was all about power, Rob.
Right.
I mean, think about the Waters of the United States rule. Land use decisions are the province of the states and local towns and cities and private property owners across the country. What did the EPA do with the Waters of the United States rule, WOTUS, in 2015? They took that over. That was all about power. They wanted to make land use decisions in the place of private property owners and the states. And so what you're saying is spot on. I mean, in using regulatory power to pick winners and losers, that's what the past administration did. What our aim should be is fuel diversity. Our aim should be that as we generate electricity, as an example, that we want utility companies and consumers making decisions on what provides the most stability with the power grid and the most cost effectiveness. So coal and natural gas and oil and hydro and renewables and nuclear, all those should be part of our mix. The EPA shouldn't come in and say we favor some of those and we disfavor others. And that's exactly what took place under the past administration. And it's not what regulators should do. I mean, we exist to make rules that provide fairness and equity to all those in the marketplace and not to pick winners and losers. I mean, I've made this comment many times, Rob. Regulations ought to make things regular. It ought to provide, a notice to those in the industry and the citizens, here's what's expected of you, and then give time to allocate resources to comply and make sure that as those rules are adopted, you actually hear from the voice of those individuals that are impacted. So this is really getting back to the basics, getting back to the fundamentals at our agency, focusing on core mission of air quality and water quality and land remediation under the Superfund program, and making sure that we have objectives and metrics that we can celebrate progress as opposed to simply bumper stickers. I will tell you this. The past administration, there was quite a bit of talk but very little action. We're trying to do the inverse of that. We're trying to, quit talking about things and actually go out and execute and make sure that we improve the environment across the country, and also do this, know that we can be pro-growth, pro-jobs, and pro-environment. We don't have to choose between the two, because here's what people don't know. Since 1980, we've seen tremendous growth in our gross domestic product as a country, but we've also seen a 65% reduction in those air pollutants that we regulate under the Clean Air Act. That's the American way. The American way is to produce and also to manage. The past administration just simply tried to hoard. They said keep 2/3 of fossil fuels in the ground. That's not how we do business as a country.
Last question for you. Obviously, the EPA, a hugely consequential agency for a state like North Dakota, where our primary industries are energy and agriculture. What message could you send to the people who work in those industries in our state about your leadership going forward?
That we're going to strike this pro-growth, pro-environment balance, that we're going to make sure their voices are heard in the rulemaking process, that we're going to respect rule of law, actually stay within the framework that Congress has passed, that we're going to restore, partnership through cooperative federalism with the states, and that we're going to do rulemaking, the way you're supposed to do it. You propose a rule, take comment, and finalize it, and not allow people to sue us and then cut deals before a court through sue and settle or regulatory litigation. So that's what the past administration did. We're going to do it the right way, and we're going to focus on good outcomes and strike this balance between growth, jobs, and the environment.
Mr. Pruitt, thanks for your time today.
Thank you.
That's Administrator Scott Pruitt of the Environmental Protection Agency. More here on the